What this former speechwriter to Barack Obama and Michelle Obama says about Palestine and Israel is utterly vile. Don't get me wrong, this is properly vile stuff. It's also very educational. Not in the way that she intended, I'll give you that. Seriously, strap yourselves in for this one because it is grim, but it offers an important lesson. You see, after 2 years of daily genocidal depravity, and Israel is still slaughtering Palestinians, we're not going to stop talking about that on this channel. We've got lots to come about what's happening to Gaza now. But after all of that horror, that barbarism, Israel's cheerleaders are desperate. They know that the world has seen Gaza wiped from the face of the earth, reduced to apocalyptic rubble. Tens of thousands of children blown apart, burned alive, suffocated under rubble. Hospitals destroyed, medics slaughtered. Israel's cheerleaders know the world has seen Israel deliberately starve the Palestinian people, repeatedly murder aid workers, journalists, kidnap thousands of people, torture and indeed rape many of them in captivity. They know that the world has heard Israel's leaders and officials repeatedly broadcast their genocidal intent in the most unapologetic, blood-curdling terms imaginable. We could go on. The sort of limitless depravity that reminds any humane person of the darkest moments in our species' history. And Israel's cheerleaders know that despite the mainstream media overwhelmingly trying to hide that barbarism, to suppress Israel's shameless genocidal intent, to dehumanize Palestinians, to uncritically broadcast Israel's lies, they know that most people have seen, heard, read more than enough. They are repulsed by what Israel has done and have accordingly shifted dramatically against Israel. That includes people in the United States. The polling shows that far more Americans think, correctly, that Israel has committed genocide than not, and that includes Jewish Americans, particularly younger Jewish Americans. That's the context for the comments made by Sarah Hurwitz, who was the speechwriter to Barack Obama and to Michelle Obama. Now, she's done a round of interviews because she's got a new book out called As a Jew, Reclaiming Our Story from Those Who Blame, Shame and Try to Erase Us. Not a book promotion. Do not buy her terrible book. Let's start with this clip.
We're kind of entering a post-literate society, and if like all day long your brain is just smashed again and again by TikTok with really upsetting carnage in Gaza, then like you're talking and like I'm sorry if this is a graphic thing to say, but like when I'm trying to make arguments in favor, for Israel, I realize I'm talking through a wall of dead children. Like that's what people are seeing. So when I'm like, yeah, but it's 1.5 civilians they're just seeing carnage.
But
right?
that's
like,
the emotional blackmail.
I mean, fair enough, but like again, I mean that's nice, but like again, I'm hearing that through a wall of screaming children. It's like I think it's a harder argument than we're understanding. So I actually really strongly think that like Jewish day schools should absolutely say no child owns a smartphone until senior year. They don't own one at all. Period. We give it to them senior year and we teach them. Like this whole not during the day, great, nice start. No smartphone at all until senior year. Dumb phone, sure. But I think that we've got to like give our kids' brains a chance and their mental health a chance before they start getting really warped.
Where do you even begin? The basic argument here is that American children, including Jewish American children, are being exposed to footage of carnage unleashed by the Israeli army against the people of Gaza, up to and including Palestinian children, and that this is triggering an emotional reaction in them, which is making them turn away from Israel and making them immune to the facts-based, statistics-based, rational arguments offered up by pro-Israel cheerleaders like Sarah Hurwitz. The solution to that isn't to focus on stopping Israel murdering Palestinians, but to stop children in the United States, younger people, being able to see Israel murdering Palestinians, which would then stop them having an emotional response to hideous atrocities, thus therefore stop them turning away from Israel and make them more likely to listen to people like her. She even suggests this horror is making people warped. She was told there by the interviewer interjected to go, this is emotional blackmail. What? Images and footage of Palestinian children and overwhelming evidence of Israel committing unspeakable atrocities is emotional blackmail. But she says that this horror, seeing this horror on people's phone could make people warped. You want to know what I think is warped, Sarah? It's people who are more horrified at being able to see the consequences of unspeakable atrocities rather than the unspeakable atrocities themselves. It's people who are atrocity deniers. It's people who are genocide deniers. That's what I think is warped. It's people who don't show any evidence of seeing Palestinians as being people with lives of any meaningful worth. What she tried to allude to in that little contribution was that the fact she has on offer would rebut the footage of the slaughter that people are seeing somehow. Now, let's just be clear here, if we're going down the facts and statistics routes, which we must. Very, very important, of course, and is overwhelmingly the case being made, because we know what the facts and statistics are. The images and the footage are also crucial evidence, because we can see the impact of what Israel has done to the Palestinian people. But like the official death toll stands now at over 72,500. That's just people who suffered violent deaths. Now, according to every single academic study, that is a drastic underestimate. Let's just talk about The Economist. The Economist supported Israel's genocidal onslaught against Gaza. Now, their very out-of-date estimate from nearly 7 months ago was that between 1.4 times and over twice as many Palestinians had been killed by the Israeli army as the official figures said. So back then, the official statistics were 52,500 killed, but the high estimate of The Economist was 109,000. As they noted, that excludes people who died because of indirect causes, which were nonetheless caused by Israel's onslaught. The lack of medical care, because they destroyed it. The mass destruction of hospitals and doctors and nurses and paramedics being slaughtered so people couldn't get medical care. For example, if they've got cancer, pregnancy, if they're pregnant, or people with respiratory illnesses or heart conditions, along with other indirect causes caused by Israel's onslaught, the spread of disease. Hunger because of deliberate starvation, lack of clean water, lack of shelter, the impact of constant displacement. We could go on. We know that according to their leaked statistics, the so-called Israel Defense Forces believe that 83% of Palestinians they've killed in Gaza are civilians. What the statistics show is that the proportion of people killed in Gaza in such a short space of time, incidentally, compared to all these other so-called conflicts, but it's higher than every single so-called conflict in the 21st century. I say so-called because a genocide is not a conflict. And the proportion killed in Gaza is much higher than most of these so-called, when we're talking about so-called conflicts. These are conflicts in many cases rather than a genocide. These other examples of terrible violence. What she's falling back on here is what has become the go-to position of every cheerleader of Israel, which is that people in the West have turned on Israel because social media allows them to see atrocities that the mainstream media won't show them. She hasn't framed it like that, but that's what she means. And it is what drove US politicians to try and ban TikTok, and the prospective new owners of the US TikTok operations are pro-Israel cheerleaders, which is being openly celebrated by Benjamin Netanyahu for this reason. And by the way, that content they're seeing isn't just of, for example, Palestinians being butchered. It's Israeli soldiers posting their own war crimes on social media and celebrating it. Celebrating their horrible crimes. The truth is that the footage and images people have seen are only the tip of a genocidal iceberg. But let's hear more from this morally bankrupt individual.
I think that since October 7th, but really before then, there have been huge shifts in America on how people think about Jews and Israel. And I think that is especially true of young people. So we are now wrestling with a new, generational divide here. And I think that's particularly true in that social media is now our source of media. And this, it used to be that the media you got in America was American media, and it was pretty mainstream. It generally didn't express extreme anti-Israel views. You had to go to a pretty weird bookstore to find global media and fringe media. But today, we have social media, which is a global medium, right? Its algorithms are shaped by billions of people worldwide who don't really love Jews. And so while in the 1990s, a young person probably wasn't going to find Al Jazeera or someone like Nick Fuentes, today those media outlets find them. They find them on their phones. It's also this increasingly post-literate media, less and less text, more and more videos. So you have TikTok just smashing our young people's brains all day long with video of carnage in Gaza. And this is why so many of us can't have a sane conversation with younger Jews, because anything that we try to say to them, they are hearing it through this wall of carnage. So I want to give data and information and facts and arguments, and they are just seeing in their minds carnage, and I sound obscene. And, I think, unfortunately, the very smart, bet that we made on Holocaust education to serve as anti-Semitism education In this new media environment, I think that is beginning to break down a little bit, because Holocaust education is absolutely essential. But I think it may be confusing some of our young people about anti-Semitism because they learn about big, strong Nazis hurting weak, emaciated Jews. And they think, oh, anti-Semitism is like anti-black racism, right? Powerful white people against powerless black people. So when on TikTok all day long they see powerful Israelis hurting weak, skinny Palestinians, it's not surprising that they think, oh, I know, the lesson of the Holocaust is you fight Israel. You fight the big, powerful people hurting the weak people.
Oh my word, where to begin here? Now, we'll talk about the panic, which is clearly on display here, about the shift in the views of Jewish Americans, particularly younger Jewish Americans. That's what a lot of this panic is about. They know that within the communities of Jewish Americans, particularly younger Jewish Americans, they have lost the argument with every passing day. That's what they're panicking about. But no, let's just go through, because I'll talk about that later. Let's just know how she puts Al Jazeera, a credible, respected international network with extremely courageous journalists, including Palestinian journalists who've been murdered by Israel, in the same bracket as the far-right extremist Nick Fuentes. She's absolutely right that one of the advantages of the internet is that it allows people to access more information that a corporate-owned mass media would previously have restricted them to. If Israel had wiped Gaza out in 1990, very few people would have known the truth. That is absolutely true, because Israel bans foreign journalists from entering Gaza. The Palestinian journalists in Gaza, how would they have got anything out? They wouldn't have been able to do that. Now, it's fascinating, isn't it? The argument she's making here, the atrocities being shown, are they real or not, Sarah? Are those images real or not? Because, I mean, what you clearly are making, obviously, what you're trying to say here is, well, mainstream media outlets wouldn't show that horror. So, back in the day, you wouldn't really be able to access it. Do you not understand how much you're telling on yourself here? I mean, what she's trying to suggest is that this imagery and footage of obscene atrocities is somehow not real compared to data, information, fact argument, she puts it. Would she talk about this, about any other horror? Like any other military onslaught, let alone genocide? Would she talk about being able to see the victims and the impact in this way? No, she wouldn't. She'd regard it as disgusting if someone made that same argument. She'd be right. Now, she says she wants data, information, fact argument as a rebuttal to images of carnage. As I say, which she's somehow counterposing to information and facts as though they're not real. Here's a fact, Sarah, and you're not going to like it. As well as the United Nations Commission and NGOs ranging from Amnesty International to Médecins Sans Frontières, who've all concluded long ago that Israel's committing genocide, it is the consensus of genocide and Holocaust scholars that Israel has committed genocide against the Palestinian people. Earlier this year, 86% of the International Association of Genocide Scholars passed a resolution affirming that Israel is committing genocide. Let me just name some of these scholars. Omar Bartov, Raz Sigal, Amos Goldberg, Daniel Blattman, Shmuel Lederman. All of these genocide scholars are Israeli. I've just named some Israeli genocide scholars who have all concluded, based on the overwhelming evidence, that Israel has committed genocide. Omar Bartov, as an example, he's the Dean's Professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Brown University. These are scholars, world preeminent scholars, who have dedicated their whole lives to the study of genocide, and indeed, in many of their cases, specifically the Holocaust. They know this topic inside out. Sarah Hurwitz is trying to position herself as this oasis of rationality amidst mass hysteria caused by, to repeat, images and videos of innocent Palestinians being butchered by the Israeli military. So why do you think, Sarah, you are more rational and evidence-based than the world's leading genocide scholars? What do you know they don't exactly? You are a speechwriter, in the main, for the former First Lady of the United States. And I was going to say that the most memorable contribution you've ever made to human civilization is coining the phrase, when they go low, we go high. But having done a little Google, it turns out you didn't even come up with that one. Michelle Obama did herself. How embarrassing. Being someone's speechwriter and not even coming up with the only memorable line that they're actually known for, not to begrudge people who write speeches for politicians' partners as they open libraries or museums or whatever, not quite the lifelong study of genocide, is it? Even if you somehow thought that genocide scholars have got this wrong, based on what exactly? Your emotions, because that's the irony here. This is the irony. The reason you don't think Israel has committed genocide is because you think that would cause an adverse emotional reaction within you. You would feel, you would be sent into a kind of emotional spasm. That's what's stopping you from coming to that conclusion. You're trying to position this as everyone else has gone emotionally crazy and hysterical. And that's what the problem is here. That's why they've come to the conclusion of genocide. When actually this is all about your emotion. You would feel traumatized because you think, clearly, that Israel is the representative of the Jewish people, and that would mean that the Jewish people have committed genocide. When actually, the problem response there is to actually demarcate between Israel and the Jewish people. But that's the problem here. This is all about your emotion. It's facts and evidence, your emotion. You're trying to suggest it's the other way around, which is why we're talking about genocide scholars. Because, if somehow they got this wrong, genocide scholars, and it wasn't quite the threshold of genocide somehow, would you not realize that if such esteemed scholars of genocide have arrived at this conclusion, then at the very least, an unbelievably major crime has been committed? Like, if genocide scholars are saying this is genocide, then you'd have to think to yourself, well, they must have a pretty good reason to come up with that. But no, would a genocide scholar flippantly use genocide? When they've studied genocide all their lives, would they wrongly, flippantly just use it willy-nilly? Unless you think genocide scholars are all fraudsters and have no idea what they're talking about at all. If you think that, what's your evidence? I mean, it really is this truly awful synthesis of arrogance and moral bankruptcy. And I have to ask you, Sarah, how are you not embarrassed? She also then, and honestly, this person is remarkable, and I do not mean that as a compliment. She also then suggests Holocaust education is to blame for people being repulsed by Israel's genocide. Her view is that the lesson of the Holocaust is not never again means never again for everybody. No. She thinks the lesson only exclusively applies to Jewish people and clearly nobody else, because what she thinks Holocaust education is doing is leading people to understand power dynamics, the power dynamic which underlines every genocide. As she puts it, powerful Israelis against weak, skinny Palestinians. Goodness me, skinny. Sarah, yeah, they're skinny because Israel starved them. What we should learn from the Holocaust as a universal lesson is the monstrous danger posed by a belief in ethnic supremacy and its inevitable flip side, dehumanization. That is a universal danger. Any people can commit a genocide. It doesn't matter who they are, and it doesn't matter what their history is. That includes victims of genocide. The Serbs suffered genocide in World War II. Serb forces in the 1990s committed genocide. That has caused a lot of anger, calling it genocide, and it does cause a lot of anger to Serbs. I was in Belgrade last year interviewing Russian exiles, and I was told while I was there, the main tower in Belgrade had this neon sign rotating around it saying, "We are not a genocidal people." And that's because the UN passed a resolution condemning the genocide at Srebrenica. And there were posters and placards everywhere about it. And the view is, how dare you? We're victims. We're the victims in history. We could never commit genocide. We're the ones who suffered it. Do you think that applies to Serb people? Love to hear your thoughts on that one. Let's just hear this. We'll keep going. Let's hear this from another interview she did about pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses.
And I have to walk them through, like, okay, if a classmate of yours, I was like, can I walk through your campus with a t-shirt that says, "I love Israel"? And they're like, "Oh God, no." I'm like, okay, what if a Black student came to you and said, my campus is great for Black students, but I can't wear my Black Lives Matter t-shirt, I'd get harassed. And the student's like, "Oh, that's racism. That's terrible." Great. Gay student says, my campus, great for queer students, but if I wear my Pride t-shirt, I will be harassed. Like, it's not great. That's homophobia.
Right.
So I was like, so how come if you wear your Israel t-shirt and you get harassed, you don't think that's anti-Semitism? And they're like, no, but the problem, it's not Jews, it's Israel. I'm like, okay, what if your Chinese American classmate wore a t-shirt that says, "I love China"? Even if your classmates knew what a terrible human rights violator China is, I'm guessing they would think, well, okay, I'm sure she doesn't love the Chinese government. She's probably just passionate about her heritage, or maybe she's studying Chinese history or language. I think your classmates would give her the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
And that is not something that happens for Jewish students.
I'm going to use my own lane as a gay man here, by the way, because she's invoked gay people here. She makes a comparison between a student on campus wearing a t-shirt which says, "I love Israel," and a Black student wearing a t-shirt which says "Black Lives Matter," or a gay student wearing a Pride t-shirt. And she says if the latter two were harassed, That would be racism or indeed homophobia. So why is it anti-Semitic if a student is harassed for wearing an I Love Israel t-shirt? Now, we should be clear here that pro-Israel cheerleaders leaders have redefined harassment to mean anyone challenging Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people. But she's right, that would be racism or homophobia. Yeah, correct. There's not a comparison, Sarah. Now, if we're going to use an actual parallel, what if, in the Srebrenica massacre of 1995, a student on an American college campus went round wearing a t-shirt which was written, or had written on it, I love Republic Srpska. I love Republika Srpska. That is the self-declared Serb Republic in Bosnia, whose forces committed genocide in Srebrenica in 1995. What if they were challenged by other students? Would that be anti-Serb racism, in your opinion? Would that just be an innocent case of someone simply showing their love and affinity for this nation that they believe in? It's just an innocent t-shirt. Now, if we're going to go into my lane, because it says about a gay pride t-shirt, if it had been decided that because of the murderous persecution of gay people across multiple countries and cultures, that there had to be a gay state set up, that's the only way we could be safe, which violently displaced a vast majority of people who already lived there, killed vast numbers of them, illegally occupied their land, illegally colonized their land, subjected them to apartheid, and then committed genocide against them. And someone walked around a US college campus with a t-shirt expressing their love for that state as it was committing genocide, and other students challenged them. I want to be clear, that would not be homophobia, no. And that's the equivalent. That's the equivalent. Israel is a state, literally in law, founded on ethnic supremacy. It is, I mean, comparing that to a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, a t-shirt rejecting ethnic supremacy, well, this person is as ignorant as they are delusional and offensive. Let's just do this final part here.
There's another kind of anti-Semitism, which is like, you're a Jew, you're bad, but there is something you can do to be okay. You can give up whatever it is that I, the majority, think is disgusting about Judaism. And so back in the day, if you were a Jew converted to Christianity, they wouldn't kill you. For some time, at least.
Yes, I have.
For a while, maybe.
If you got lucky.
You could convert. And today, I think I think about my parents' generation, the 50s, if you were a Jew and, just get rid of your last name, your nose, your Jewy gestures, right? Be less Jewy and then you're safe. Today, it's, get rid of your Zionism and then you're safe. And so you see these poor kids who are like, they're like, my rabbi growing up told me Israel was great. And then I got to campus and I learned there were genocidal, colonial Nazis. I saw the light. I had an epiphany. And then I took anti-Zionism and anti-colonialism into my heart and now I'm saved. And their classmates are like, now you're saved. You're a Jew who's seen the light. And it's like...
Well, this shows the real panic she's got here. She knows she's losing the hearts and minds of Jewish Americans. The latest polling shows that 61% of Jewish Americans think Israel has committed war crimes. 39% think it's committed genocide. Among younger Jews, 50% think Israel has committed genocide. And while 56% of Jewish Americans overall say they're emotionally attached to Israel, that falls to 36% among 18 to 34-year-olds. You see, there is a long and inspiring tradition amongst Jewish people of fighting injustice and oppression, and that tradition is re-emerging with a vengeance, not least in the United States, and it is loudly fighting for the equal rights and liberation of the Palestinian people. That scares people like Sarah, who can see the ground crumbling beneath their feet. Well, suck it up, Sarah, because as far as what you believe is concerned, the only way is down. Now, one of her interviewers, because of the backlash her awful comments have received, Jonah Blatt, he's tweeted out this. I know Sarah Hurwitz in real life, not from a clip on social media. She is a thoughtful, inclusive, compassionate person of great empathy and integrity, whose books have been a profound gift to many, myself included. Sometimes the internet just sucks. Well, sometimes the internet sucks because of the content people decide to put out on it, Jonah. That includes yourself and your interview with Sarah Hurwitz. Astonishing, actually, that you seem to have this obsession with, like, Sarah, of blaming what people can see and hear on the internet for the reactions they get. I mean, is what she said real? Because she's going on about, the footage of Palestinian children being murdered, the fact people can see that is the problem. Is the problem that we can, should you just not, or equally, is it because we've got access Should you ban phones first so we can't see Sarah Hervis saying what she thinks, is what I'm trying to say. Should we take her logic to its inevitable conclusion? Now look, Joan, I am sure Sarah is great when it comes to social etiquette. I'm sure she says thank you to waiters. I'm sure she tells supermarket cashiers to have a lovely day. I'm sure she cries at sad films and turns up at the doors of her friends when they're sad, bearing coffee and cake, there to give them a hug and let them cry on the shoulder. She's also a genocide denier. She's also an atrocity denier. She's also someone who responds to the visceral emotional reactions that humane younger people get when they see a state that country is arming butcher little toddlers. And she says we need to ban smartphones so they can't see those images anymore, as if the problem is not the people being killed, but the fact people can see people getting killed. Sarah is a bad person. People with her opinions are bad people. They need to be called bad people, and they need to be told over and over again they are bad people until they realise they are bad people and they do something about it. People with monstrous opinions throughout history almost never see themselves as monsters. Almost everyone tries to rationalise their views as being driven by good and sincere and moral intentions. That doesn't make it true. History will damn people like Sarah Hervis. How do I know that? Because the present is already damning them as it is, which is why people who interviewed her are now crying about it on the internet. Because unfortunately, a lot of people, whether you like it or not, do actually see Palestinians as equal human beings. And they realise that Israel has committed one of the great crimes of our age in live streamed video for the whole world to see. It is what it is, and it is a horrible reality. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts and your comments, help us take on the pro-genocide media at patreon.com/184. You make all of it possible. Do share the video, leave your comments. I'll speak to you soon.